Hello all, thank you for clicking my channel. This weekend I went to Washington State to take some pictures. I went camping on the weekend and the purpose of this video is to give you 10 plus tips in regard to nature photography. It can be difficult to first get into nature photography for the first time. So my goal is to help those who are new, trying to take not only new to photography, but possibly new with nature photography to kind of help you get started and your feet on the ground when you first implement it. The first step is to plan accordingly. Make sure you know exactly where you're going and look at the weather, look at the local laws, and know what you are going to need. In my case, I was not only camping, but I was hiking for a few days. So I went ahead and got myself a good pair of hiking shoes. I made sure that my camera had multiple batteries to it, multiple memory cards for backup just in case, and a tripod. You definitely want to make sure that the list of items you bring will help you during your trip, because you don't want to go all the way to your destination and then find out that you don't have the right gear. That would suck. The second tip is to know your camera's settings. Typically in nature photography, I prefer to shoot in RAW. When you shoot in RAW, it's uncompressed photos that your camera is saving for you. I wouldn't recommend shooting in JPEG because those are typically compressed photos. When you're taking pictures in nature, when let's say you have a landscape, you're gonna want lower ISO. So given that you're outside, that's the good news. During the day, you're gonna have enough light. So I would recommend putting your ISO settings a little bit lower. That way you would have less grain in your image. Make sure that you have the right equipment. In my case, I brought my Leica, I brought a tripod, I brought a few filters for the lenses, and I also brought 35mm, 50mm, 90mm, and 120mm lenses. So I made sure that I had the ability, no matter what situation that I was in, to get the shot that I wanted with the equipment that I brought. My fourth tip is about camera gear. Let's say you're first starting and you're first just getting into photography in general, or in this case, nature photography. You don't necessarily need the best camera in the world. You don't need expensive gear. I started really with like a cheaper Canon camera, but also even within the past year or two, I shot great images in nature with my iPhone. So technically, really, all you need is an iPhone to take great images. Of course, when you have a better camera, you have a better sensor, you get a little bit less grain in your image, and also you can have the capability of having more megapixels in a better camera. That way, if you want, you would be able to blow up your image. But with an iPhone, perfectly fine to get into. Even though I have better equipment, I took my iPhone hiking in some cases. It's just a lot easier, and the images I got were pretty great. The fifth tip is the rule of thirds. Make sure you know what the rule of thirds are, and make sure that when you're taking a photo, you have the rule of thirds in the forefront of your mind. That way your pictures that you take aren't boring and they have more substance in them. If you happen to see animals during your hike or while you're in nature trying to get some nature shots, try not to get too close. So this goes back to one of my other tips: bring the right equipment. If you don't bring a lens that would let you zoom into an animal that's far away, don't even bother trying to take pictures of animals, because they will either fly away, they'll run away, what have you. I guess that's one thing. You also want to keep far away, because let's say it's a bear, you don't want to get mauled. My seventh tip, and this goes back to if you're taking pictures of animals or like living things in nature, really, want to make sure that you blur your background. So if you have a camera and you have the ability to have a lower aperture, you want to do that. You want a lower aperture. That way your depth of field makes it such that your background is blurred from your subject. So if you take a super close-up shot of, I don't know, like a monkey, if you happen to see a monkey, you want to make sure that you have a lower aperture. That way trees and other things in the background don't really get in the way of the image or your subject. Same really goes for portrait photography, so kind of take that mentality into nature photography if you're taking pictures of animals specifically. My 8th tip really is not something you can control to an extent, but you can control the time. And it's in regard to lighting. Use natural lighting as much as you can. People always really say that the best time to take pictures outside would be during golden hour. So that would be in the morning. I also consider that evening as well, when the sun is rising and setting. That way you get some really interesting, not only shadows, but lighting as well. In some cases that's not necessarily helpful, so you can always keep golden hour in mind, because that way it's just a lot easier. You got cool colors and shadows. But in some cases, my recent trip to Washington, like this picture, it wouldn't be good in the morning because there would be way too much shadows in the trees where I was, because I was effectively in a canyon. If I took it during golden hour, everything would be pretty much dark and the mountain would be light. Try to have fun with perspectives. So when you're out and you're in the field, you want to look at every shot as, well, in my opinion, this is what I try to do. You want to try to take every shot and have like an interesting perspective to it. On that note, one of the things I've done when I first got into it was I would look at artists that I liked surrounding the genre of photography that I would be taking. And one of my favorite nature photographers specifically is John Fielder. John Fielder is based out of Colorado, and he has a lot of nature photos, including Colorado scenery. One of the best things to do, in my opinion, would be to look at artists that you like, go to the places that they've been, and when you're starting at least, try to get their styling in it, in your image. And then as time goes on, you would start to morph into yourself.
I hope you all enjoyed this video, and not only enjoyed it, but tried to utilize some of these tips the next time you go out in the field. Nature photography could be hard to get into, but if you have patience and apply yourself to get there, you would be able to get there most definitely. If you find you enjoyed this video, please feel free to press the like button and comment if you have any questions you would like me to answer for you.